Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, world. This is the Rastafari International Ambassador, the man from Boswak, Jaboni, with his garment dipped in blood. Today, I'm going to present history as I find it. There's a saying that the world is divided into those that know and those that don't. As such, I will be presenting history as it unfolds to me. And it will be up to you to put your understanding of how you find it. Today, we are living in a different time where everything is at the fingertip of your digital world. In one of my recent podcasts, I have said so much about Dr. W.E.B. DuBois. I must make it be known that I have never read anything about Dr. DuBois. I've never read any of his work. My knowledge of Dr. E. DuBois was as of a result of my Rastafari teaching and my Garvey teaching growing up, which was an oral tradition. We were taught not to trust the Black American because of what they did to Marcus Garvey. We were also taught that W.E. DuBois was the person that led the campaign against Dr. Marcus Garvey. But now, today, I have found out differently. So, as I said, I will be revealing the things, the history as it unfolds to me. And it's for you, especially the younger generation, to apply your knowledge today. Now you will understand why a man like I, 70-year-old this month, and I keep changing in my thoughts, my behavior, and attitude as I grow older. Because as I grow older, I learn more. You're never too old to learn. So, what can I say?
Hello, good morning. My name is Dinah and I'll be your tour guide for today. You are welcome to the DuBois Center. For today's tour, we'll be starting from the gravesite. It's usually the last part of our tour, but for today, we have something different. So please come along with me. So in here, we have the final resting place of Dr. DuBois. But I can't give you a rundown of his death before I give you a rundown of his life. Dr. DuBois came to Ghana from 1961 to 1963. He was invited here by the first president, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He came here to edit a document. This document we call the Encyclopedia Africana, Dictionary of African Biography. He was supposed to do 10 to 20 volumes, which would cover all 54 African countries. But sadly, in his lifetime, Dr. DuBois was only able to do 3 volumes. Out of these 3 volumes, we have 8 African countries. Volume 1, we talks about Ethiopia and Ghana. Volume 2, Sierra Leone and Zaire, which is today's Congo. And Volume 3, Botswana, Lesotho, South Africa, and Swaziland, which is today's Eswatini. Dr. DuBois was born on the 23rd of February 1868. He was born at Great Barrington, Massachusetts, born to a French father, Alfred DuBois, and a Dutch West African mother, Mary Savannah Bergat. Dr. DuBois attended the Great Barrington High School, where he was the only black boy in his class. After Great Barrington, his main dream was to attend Harvard University. But to go to Harvard, he first went to Fisk University. After Fisk, he attended Harvard, where he became the first black man to earn a PhD in the year 1896. After Harvard, he went on later to attend Berlin University, but he won't complete all of his stay there as he couldn't afford all of his tuition, so he did a bit of the semesters and left Berlin. He joined the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, where he edited the magazine known as The Crisis from 1901. Dr. DuBois is known today as the modern-day father of Pan-Africanism. He was a civil rights activist, a socialist, sociologist, historian, a teacher, a writer, an editor, and a man who strongly believed in the freedoms of black people. Dr. DuBois died here in his residence on the 27th of August 1963. He died in his sleep in his bedroom on the eve of the March on Washington. Here is Dr. DuBois's gravesite. He was buried originally at Osu Christian War Castle, but later in 1985, his residence was changed into a museum, and so his last remains were exhumed and brought here. Beneath here, we have the last remains of Dr. DuBois. On his gravestone, we have a few samples. Over here is a sample of soil from his hometown in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And in here are samples of soils from his first family. That's his first wife, his first son, Young Berger Jr., and his daughter, Nina Yolande DuBois. Dr. DuBois buried all members of his first family before coming to Ghana. When we get inside, we will talk more about his first family and his later family. In here, we have a sample of water. In Africa, we believe that the journey from the land of the living to the land of the dead is very long, and on that journey, there is no water. So before any man dies, we give them water, and that water will carry them all the way to the afterlife. Sadly, Dr. DuBois died in his sleep. He did not have any water to drink. So we keep this water here for him wherever he may be. Behind here are some pictures from his state burial in 1963. He was buried 2 days after his death. At the top here is a shirt from the fraternity he joined. Dr. DuBois joined the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and that is why you have the shirt hanging in here. The flags on the floor here and the caps on the wall there all represent schools he taught and attended. So you have flags from Harvard University, a shirt from Fisk University, a flag from Howard, and a flag from Clark Atlanta. Dr. DuBois taught at Clark Atlanta and Howard University, attended Harvard and Fisk University. In here, we have the ashes of his second wife, Mrs. Shirley Graham DuBois. She died in China of breast cancer. But during her death, she left a message that she wanted her remains to be put next to her husband DuBois. So the Chinese people cremated her and brought her ashes all the way to Ghana in this very box. In here, we have her ashes. When we get to her office, I'll give you a little bit information about her life and for how long she stayed in Ghana. She attended Oberlin and Howard University, where she met Dr. DuBois and taught music at Yale University. At the top here, we have a web. The web is a symbol of unity in our part of the world. It reminds us that even though these Pan-Africanists no longer exist, we have their lessons they left behind, and that we should build on these lessons to create a better future for Black people. So we'll progress into the inner parts of the house and learn a bit more about Dr. DuBois and his stay in Ghana. Do come along with me. Okay. In here is the bedroom of Dr. DuBois. He took his last breath in this very room on the night of the 27th of August 1963. Over here we have some artifacts which belong to Dr. DuBois. Let's start from here. In here are Dr. DuBois's graduation gowns and academic hood. The gown in black was what he wore during his graduation in Harvard in 1896. He was the first black man to earn a PhD, and that was the academic gown he put on that day. In here, the gown in red was gifted to him by the University of Ghana in 1963, a few months before he passed away. He was given the title Doctor of Letters, and this gown was made for him to wear on that day. And behind here are academic hoods from some universities he taught and attended. In here, we also have some artifacts. The books in red stacked 1, 2, 3 are the Encyclopedia Africana, Dictionary of African Biography. So that was the main reason why Dr. DuBois came to Ghana. Initially, I mentioned that he had only 3 volumes of these encyclopedias made, and I mentioned the various countries. Dr. DuBois did not totally finish editing the encyclopedias during his lifetime, but after his death, 2 scholars from Harvard finished it on his behalf. They are Henry Louis Gates Jr. and Kwame Anthony Appiah. Later, the encyclopedia project was discontinued and left in the honor of Dr. DuBois. In this room, we have some gifts belonging to Dr. DuBois. In 1959, Dr. DuBois visited China. In there, the Chinese gave him 4 gifts, and out of these 4, we have only 3 in existence now. Over here is one of those gifts, the scrolls which hang on the wall. The Chinese people saw Dr. DuBois to be a very wise and intelligent man, and these scrolls were crafted to remind him of that wisdom he wielded. The other gift is right in here. This walking stick was used by Dr. DuBois till the time of his death in 1963, originally crafted by the Chinese people. On his visit to China in 1951, he was 91 years, and as a very old man, he needed aid to walk. So this walking stick was crafted to aid him throughout his 91 years of age and the rest of his life. The third gift is right here, the embroidery which hangs on this wall. This embroidery is a depiction of how the Chinese people saw and viewed Dr. DuBois. So in here we have a man with a gray beard, some scrolls, a walking stick, a deer over here, and some seeds by his side. The beard represents old age, the scrolls wisdom, the walking stick which is in their leadership. The scrolls are the same one which hang on the wall, the deer peace, and the seeds chart. So the whole meaning of this is an old wise leader directing his people peacefully, given all he had. Dr. DuBois might not have had so much wealth, money, or resources at his disposal, but his ideology surrounding Black people, our freedoms, and our continuity into a better future was the charity he gave the world during his lifetime. Over here, the last gift is no longer in existence. That was the birthday of Dr. DuBois, that's the 23rd of February, was celebrated as a public holiday in China till it was later annulled. In here, we have photocopies of Dr. DuBois' original diaries. Dr. DuBois spoke 6 languages. He taught Greek and Latin, spoke French, English, Chinese, and Dutch. These diaries come in his original handwriting. So in here, we have a wide disposal of diaries written in Dr. DuBois's handwriting in the various languages he spoke. In here, we have pictures lettered A to E, which are of the early members of Dr. DuBois's family, and some pictures from his early life. So picture A, which is almost faded, is a picture of his French father, Alfred DuBois. B is a picture of baby DuBois, his mother, Mary Sylvana Bergat, and Dr. DuBois's cousin. Picture C is a picture of Dr. DuBois when he was 4 years old. D was taken during his time in the Great Barrington High School. And picture E is of Dr. DuBois, his first wife, Mrs. Nina Goma DuBois, and his son, who died at the age of 18 months. We will talk more about his first family when we get to the other room. In here is Dr. DuBois's walk-in closet. The other room over here is Dr. DuBois's washroom. Inside his washroom, you would find a sunken bathtub. That bathtub was just to help a very old man take his bath easily. The towels on the floor are all original, and the washroom has been maintained as to how Dr. DuBois used it during his stay here. Hanging on the walls here, you would find some pictures of Dr. DuBois. Over here, we have a few pictures of him. The picture I like to talk about the most is the one here. This was the last birthday he celebrated in this house. In that picture, you have 95 years old Dr. DuBois. The woman behind him is his second wife, Mrs. Shirley Graham DuBois. The man on the right-hand side is the first president of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and the lady on the left-hand side is the wife to the first president, Fatia Nkrumah, and she hailed from Egypt. The top right corner there is a picture of Dr. DuBois in the academic gown gifted to him by the University of Ghana. And also over here, we have a picture of Dr. DuBois' second wife, the first president of Ghana, and Kwame Ture. Most people know him by his original name, which is Stokely Carmichael. We will talk more about Mrs. Shirley in the other room. And down here is, or should I say, are some pictures of Dr. DuBois' trip to China. So we are done with this room, or should I say almost. Something new has been added here, and that's the last message of Dr. DuBois. Before Dr. DuBois died at the age of 95, he wanted to leave a message not just to black people, but to all the children of the world. In this message, he says, "Always I have been uplifted by the thought that what I have done well will live long and justify my life, that what I have done ill or never finished can now be handed on to others for endless days to be finished while I rest. One thing alone I charge you, live and believe in life. Always human beings will live and progress to greater, broader and fuller life. The only possible death is to lose belief in this truth simply because this greater end comes slowly, just because time is long." W.E.B. Du Bois' last message. In this message, Dr. DuBois reminds us of the struggle he and other men before, during, and after him went through. The struggle to make sure that a black man is also considered as a man in his time. If you cut back to history, maybe 400 years ago, black people were looked down upon. We were subjected to slavery, dehumanization, and colonialism. So Du Bois, in addition to numerous men we do not know and those who would come after him for many years later, will go through one struggle to make sure that the black man is known for who he is. The black man was not just a slave or maybe a lesser creation. The black man was on the same level as the white man was other races. For as the white man bleeds red, so does the black man bleed red. So with his dream, he made sure that he achieves freedom for the black race. But he couldn't finish this. Even though Du Bois lived to the age of 95, 95 was not so long a time for him to finish his dream. So he has left this unaccomplished task to those who come after him. We call these people in his message the others, the unborn generation, those who exist now, the young, the old, the aged. We are supposed to make sure that black people everywhere have a taste of this freedom. The freedom that we enjoy today is because of the struggle of DuBois and other people. Let us not let that freedom go to waste. Let us make sure that into the next future and the next and the next and for generations to come, we preach about the issues of freedom. Even though the black man is free, he is not totally free. Let us not forget that neocolonialism still exists. Ideas of racism and segregation still exist in today's world. We as a people are supposed to become a force to fight against institutions like this, which bind us to low-level ideas. We are supposed to make sure that the dreams of DuBois and other Pan-Africanists or civil rights activists come to pass, that the black man becomes a better man for who he is meant to be and not what he is thought to be of. One's intelligence goes beyond what we call books. Our intelligence is how we adapt to situations and today's environment. So let us use our intelligence to achieve the dream of Dr. DuBois. So we'll move on to the next room, and that is the room, or should I say the office of his second wife, Mrs. Shirley Graham DuBois. So come with me. At the top here is a picture of Dr. DuBois' daughter. That's Nina Yolande DuBois. She lived till the age of 60 years before passing away from a heart attack. So please come in. Here is the office of Dr. DuBois' second wife, Mrs. Shirley Graham DuBois. Initially, Dr. DuBois got married to his first wife, Mrs. Nina Goma DuBois. They were married for 54 years. During their time together, they had 2 children, a male and a female. The male son, Young Berger Jr., died at the age of 18 months. He suffered from an illness and he couldn't get medical aid, so he died as a result of the disease. Later, they had a daughter, the picture we saw up there of Nina Yolande DuBois. Nina grew to the age of 60 years before passing away from a heart attack. Later, his first wife, Mrs. Nina Goma DuBois, will pass away in 1950 from stroke. Later, in 1951, Dr. DuBois married his second wife, Mrs. Shirley Graham DuBois. She was 54 years when she got married to Dr. DuBois, and he was 83 years old. During their time together, they had no children. But Mrs. Shirley was in a previous marriage. In there, she had 2 children, Robert and David. So in this marriage, Dr. DuBois adopted David and named him David Graham DuBois. So some of his living descendants came from David and the others from his biological daughter, Nina. Mrs. Shirley also held the strong values of Dr. DuBois, a belief that a black man should have the ability to change, move, adapt to situations, and become free. She was also a civil rights activist and a music teacher as well. Mrs. DuBois, on her trip to Ghana, was the advisor to the first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and also the first director of Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. She lived in Ghana till 1966. In 1966, Ghana had its first military coup. The democratic government of the then president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, was toppled down and a military junta took over. Mrs. DuBois, being the president's advisor, was asked a few questions concerning him, which she refused to answer. So she was kept in this house under arrest for 3 to 4 months. Later, she felt unsafe and decided to flee Ghana. She left Ghana. She took that picture in the bedroom we saw of her, the first president, and Kwame Ture in Guinea. She visited Tanzania and some other countries and decided to go back to China. It was noticed that Mrs. DuBois suffered from breast cancer, so one of the reasons for her movement to China was for treatment. Sadly, she died of breast cancer. Before she died, she left a message that she wanted her remains to be put next to her husband, Dr. DuBois. So the Chinese cremated her and brought her ashes back to Ghana. So her ashes were what we saw in the gravesite in the wooden box. Also, before they passed away, Dr. DuBois and Mrs. Shirley gained Ghanaian citizenship. For their 2-year stay in Ghana, they remained stateless. So the first president conferred on them honorary citizenship to combat that problem. And as Ghanaians, it was only befitting that they be buried in Ghana. Let us not forget that apart from being Dr. DuBois' wife, she did so much for black people too. This room, being an office, has been dedicated to female freedom fighters across the African space. Throughout history, we hear so much about the men and forget that other women still do exist. So this room is just to glorify the knowledge, the images of the women we know and do not know who have done so much for Black people. So over here, we have some of these images at the top and at the bottom, and at the center here are pictures of Mrs. Shirley Graham DuBois. On the walls there, we have more pictures from their trip to China. On these walls here, and the wooden boxes down here were used to ship Dr. DuBois's books to Ghana. On this table, we have some gifts which belong to the family. This bowl here was gifted to them by Harvard University, and the one in front here was a gift from the Czechoslovakian government. So we'll move on to the next room, which is the library of Dr. DuBois. In here is the library of Dr. DuBois. So most of the books here were brought by him on his journey to Ghana. We have a collection of 1,500 books in here. In Dr. DuBois's lifetime, it's said that he published 1,975 books before he passed away. This shelf holds some copies of his publications. So from the first shelf to the fifth shelf are books which were published by Dr. DuBois, and the last shelf are books published by his second wife, Mrs. Shirley Graham DuBois. She was a writer as well. The books in red were copies of gifts given out to his guests whenever they visited the museum. Those books have one title alone. The title of these books are In Battle for Peace. Over here we have other publications as well. You can see the Philadelphia Negro, World of Color, Souls of Black Folk. Beneath you would find Black Reconstruction, John Brown, and a few other books written by Dr. DuBois. These books have been maintained here as museum artifacts. Over here we have the W.E.B cloth. This cloth bears a direct contact to Dr. DuBois. So if you look at the center here closely, you would see spider's webs. If you look at Dr. DuBois's name, his initials are W.E.B, W.E.B DuBois. Dr. DuBois is known as Kwaku Anansi over here. Kwaku Anansi, the small witty archetype found in Akan folklore and folk tales. He is very small and devoid of physical strength, but he is very intelligent. And Dr. DuBois was also a very intelligent man. He was born in the U.S. in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He came to Ghana, he went to China, he went to Berlin, and some other countries, and wherever he went, he continued to spread the ideas of Black freedoms. He hoped for a time whereby Black people would be free and whereby we would all live in this world together in harmony with other races. Wherever he went, he wove single individual ideas of his ideologies. And just like the spider in its weaving process, it would have to weave single individual strands. At the end of the weaving process, you find out that the spider has woven a totally full, complete web. And that is the same thing Dr. DuBois did. His various ideas and his notions surrounding Black people and our freedoms. At the end of his life, or should I say the whole weaving process, he formed this, the web of unity and togetherness. So Dr. DuBois did not just fight for Black people, but he also fought for unity between us all. So we will continue to the other parts of the house. Oh yeah. Hey. Hello. Sorry. Over here was the dining room area of the family. Behind here is the kitchen block, which is no longer in use. Whenever they were here or during their stay here, their meals were cooked in there and served through the slots. The counterpiece here is original and has been maintained till today. Now on the walls here, we put up some pictures of some Pan-Africanist, civil rights activists, or should I say other freedom fighters connected to African people. These people have done so much for us as Africans, and we hope that today's people or other people who come next are to remember them. Even though we have only these images here, let's not forget there are other people connected to this struggle. Most of Africa's history was not documented. So wherever we see these pictures, let us remember that it's not just about them alone, but there are so many other people involved. The first picture here is a picture of the first president of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And beneath his picture, you have Booker T. Washington, a civil rights activist. Over here is Malcolm X, and the top here is Martin Luther King Jr. Down here is Marcus Garvey, Patrice Lumumba, Nelson Mandela, and Jomo Kenyatta. And at the center of all these pictures, we have a quote by Malcolm X. He says, "I am for the truth no matter who tells it. I am for justice no matter who it is for or against. I am a human being first and foremost, and as such, I am for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." Selflessness is the main idea I get from this message. And these past leaders did so well to emulate these characteristics. So as people who are continuing into a better future, let us do well to exhibit the characteristics of these gone leaders. Let us think of other people first before we think about ourselves. And let us not let our decisions affect others badly. Let's continue. So over here is the sitting room area of the family. On the wall here is a short family tree of Dr. DuBois. At the top, you have a picture of Dr. DuBois, his first wife, Mrs. Nina Goma DuBois, his second wife, Mrs. Shirley Graham, his son, Young Berger Jr., who died at the age of 18 months, and his daughter, Nina Yolande DuBois, who died at the age of 60. He buried all members of his first family before coming to Ghana. In here are some teacups which belonged to the family during their stay in this house. We'll continue now to the seminar hall. In here is the seminar hall. This room was not an original part of the main building. It was later constructed and attached to the main building. So the whole idea of this room is to remember civil rights activists, Pan-Africanists, and other people who have done so much for the African continent. As you can see, we have imprints of pictures on the walls. So most of these pictures have been taken down. They would later be brought back. But we have some pictures of these people who have done so many influential things for Africans. So on the walls here are some of these pictures. At the corner there are a few of those pictures as well. Now we'll talk about the colors of red, black, and green. You find these colors on all windows in the museum, and that is the Pan-African flag. The Pan-African flag was designed by Marcus Garvey, and this holds a bit of African history. The red symbolizes the blood shed by our forefathers in the struggle for freedom. The black-skinned African people who come from Africa, and the green, our resources and our vegetation. So most African countries have incorporated these colors into their flags of today. So we have added a bit of African history to the history of a country which is still being told. Behind you are some designs to further improve upon the museum. This is being done by the Museum Foundation. I do not have so much knowledge about this project as I have not been too long here, and there is still so much more I would have to learn, but they have plans of improving the whole museum. So new structures will be built at the forecourt of the old building. So you'd have a bigger library, a gallery, a whole place to learn about restoration and preservation of books, and many other facilities. So during your visit to the DuBois Museum, if you would like to give a donation to support this project, which is to be done by the Museum Foundation, you can come into our reception and ask to place a donation. You'll be directed to the donation box, and the Museum Foundation will receive your donation happily. So we will go to the last part of our tour for today, and that is the museum library. In here is the museum library. It was originally the guest room of Dr. DuBois, but was later turned into a library. We have a collection of about 3,500 plus books in here, and all these books are on various different categories. So we have most of our books are on history. We have other books on business, political science, autobiographies, reference books, and many other books. The library is opened on weekdays, weekends, and holidays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. All books can only be used here. They can't be checked out. So you need to come in, sign your name, and use any book here for free. Also, if you'd like to donate a book to the museum library, we would accept it happily. So, this brings us to the end of our tour. Whenever you're in Ghana or around, you can come use the DuBois Museum Library. And also do also visit the DuBois Museum, as you will learn so much connected to Dr. DuBois and other Pan-Africanist thoughts. Thank you very much for coming.
Wow, wasn't that wonderful? Dad learned more about DuBois than I think I had ever learned. It's great to be here. So we've seen where he's been laid to rest, and we've seen where he's lived. We've heard about the work that he's done. Our host, our tour guide, gave us a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful account. That was amazing. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're in Ghana, this is located in the Cantonments area. Please stop by the DuBois Center and come and witness one of the key voices of the diaspora. Thank you very much.